Hey, you're wide receiver Khalil Shakir, right?
I sure am, kid. Here, go long.
Whoa! You're pretty good at football, man.
And you guys are pretty good at pizza.
Oh, sick. Dude.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Trainwreck Sports Podcast, where we are here to pay the bills. The Bills dominated the Seattle Seahawks. Let's get right into it. We're bringing in the whole crew today. We got Bundt, we got Carson, and we got Parthum here. The whole squad on a late Tuesday night here, 9 p.m. start, special start time here. Just go in with our West Coast vibes from Sunday. We're just carrying it out. We loved our little visit with West Coast time. We kept it going here. Bills dominated the Seahawks, 31-10. It was a great game. How are we feeling? I'll start with you, Bundt. It's a victory Tuesday here, and it feels like the best one all year to me, if I have to be honest here.
I mean, I feel great. I might not sound great, but other than sounding like a pack-a-day smoker, things are great right now. The Bills are rolling. We're feeling good. The vibes are good. We're back, baby.
You pushed it as much as you could there. I respect that. How about you, Parthum?
Let's just say it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Seattle came in. I mean, they were very streaky to start the season. They started with 3 wins. They had 3 losses. They were coming off another win. They say it's a hostile environment in Seattle, but some people in Seattle say it's not as hostile as it used to be. And, of course, the Bills Mafia were invading and making Geno think that he was in an away game, which was pretty amazing to me in that stadium. I mean, we can take over Tennessee. We can take over Miami, like we're going to a home game any day of the week. But Seattle, one of the top 2 regularly loudest stadiums in the NFL, with those crazy fans calling themselves, priding themselves on being the 12th man. Well, we brought our 12th man, and we brought 12,000th men apparently. So, yeah, it was a great, comfortable win overall. It was a very fun Football Follies highlight film that the Seattle Seahawks provided us. I mean, bad snap after bad snap, bad penalties at the inopportune times for them. It was bad penalties on both sides. Well, I shouldn't say bad penalties. It was an over officiated game once again.
Hey, you over officious jerk!
But unlike the Jets game previously, which this game actually broke the previous season record for combined penalties in a game, and we just happened to top that. People were saying there was a lot of ticky-tack calls, but I didn't see anything egregious like, that shouldn't have been called or that should have been called. Nothing that raised the ire of the timeline on social media that much. But the Bills seemed to overcome it. I mean, Khalil Shakir was getting screen pass after screen pass. My God, the Bills actually know how to run a screen pass, and Khalil Shakir is, I guess, the magic potion for that. But they were overcoming like 1st and 20, 1st and 15s, especially throughout that first half. And the Seahawks just couldn't get their run game going. I think 1 rushing yard in the first half. I don't know if that carried over into the third quarter. But once you put Mitch Trubisky in the fourth quarter, then you know that you had a pretty easy day. Carson, what were your thoughts?
Kenneth Walker, just to jump in quick, Carson. Kenneth Walker, to jump on your stat there, 9 rushes, 12 yards on the day. So just complete domination there. What do you got there, Carson?
So it's an impressive line. Parthum, you brought up a lot of great points, and that's why I'm cautiously optimistic for the Bills' road ahead here. The schedule on paper is at least a little easier. The Seahawks, they were a team, we thought they were going to challenge us more than they did. I thought they lost the game more than we won it. Personally, they made a lot of big-time mistakes, especially down in the red zone. Geno can't take the snap under center. Terrible snap over his head on second or third drive of the game, and then they throw an interception to a 340-pound defensive tackle. But at the end of the day, the Bills come out with a win, and they won big. So you can't ask for much more. We saw a lot of progression out of that offense. Keon Coleman starting to really look like the real deal. Khalil Shakir, phenomenal outing. Amari Cooper, quiet. However, the gravity effect seems to be taking over. The other guys are getting open. And a National Tight Ends Day fit perfectly for Dawson Knox to have his biggest outing of the day, or out of the year, and Dalton Kincaid to score a touchdown. So offensively, lots to like. Defensively, I thought they were phenomenal. They really contained a DK Metcalf-less Seattle offense. And hey, Tyler Bass didn't miss anything, so you can't complain. But ultimately, hopes aren't quite with we're back yet, as Mike Bundt once said. But we're close. We're close. I'm enjoying the run for now.
Yeah, and Tyler Bass quickly. I was really worried when they said that the rain started coming down at the end of the first half.
Yes.
I was thinking, slip ups on a hold or something of that nature, and that he'd be hanged for it. But all the kicks were relatively short field goals and extra points. So good day for him, I guess.
You don't need to have the confidence yet, Carson. You'll get it in time. You're gonna figure it out in the next 2 weeks when they're 8-2, and then we're gonna be feeling better about ourselves. Okay, You're just not there. You're a little bit slower. You're a little bit behind. It'll catch up to you eventually.
Carson's still got faith in Aaron. Aaron's gonna pull one out Thursday night.
Rogers' Unk is not pulling it out. No.
That's okay. It's okay if you're a Jets fan, Carson.
Olean changed him somehow, some way. I don't know what it did, but
all right, easy. We're not quite there yet.
All right, but yeah, it was a dominant performance all around. Do you guys have any? Go start with you, Carson. Is there anything else on this game particularly? Because Bundt mentioned before the show he wants to talk about the Bills in a broader scale today, and I think this is the day to do it because there's really nothing to. As Parthum said too, there's nothing really to parse here, but pick apart on the Bills is a pretty perfect game. They built upon last week's dominant matchup. So is there anything from the last couple weeks, like you weren't here last week, that you wanted to jump on or mention that you'd like to see, that you've seen from the Bills?
Real quick, it's been a lot of the same lately as far as the past 2 weeks with the offense and defense, but we're going to lose probably 10 followers after I say this. But let's take a moment to give our flowers here to Sean McDermott, Bobby Babich, that defensive staff. I think they've done a phenomenal job. Yeah, it shouldn't be, but it is. But I think they've done a phenomenal job as of late. Sean McDermott, he comes out in the presser this week saying we have a better defense coordinator than last year, kind of as a joke. But Bobby Babich, in a week 1 battle against Arizona, we had our concerns. Since then, I mean, there's been a few roller coaster rides with Baltimore. The first half against Houston. But for the most part, I think he's done a phenomenal job. He's been outstanding in the second half of football games as far as adjustments go. That's all you can ask out of a coordinator like that in his first year. McDermott's done a pretty solid job. Situationally, there's still things that we would like to have better. It's kind of always been the knack on him. But for a team that lacked the experience, and that was the big hit for them, it seems that has not been an issue so far. And Sean McDermott, I think, has done a great job. I think he's up there in Coach of the Year running so far, up there with the Mike Tomlins of the world. I've been very impressed. Hopefully it doesn't mean anything if we get out in the first or second round of the playoffs. But so far, they've taken care of business in games that they should win. And that's all you can ask for. I've really, really liked what the coaching staff has done this year, and I think they deserve a little more respect.
And like you said, you got to enjoy that ride too.
Of course, of course.
So I just want to give a few thoughts. I'm already thinking about the playoffs right now. I don't need to see the rest of the season. Let's go forward to January. I want to see matchups. Let's get healthy. I figure we rest our starters the last 3 or 4 weeks of the regular season after we clinch the AFC East on Thanksgiving week. But seriously, this team they're set up to make a run in the playoffs. One of the more pessimistic Bills fans I interact with, I won't say his name. I respect a lot of his opinions, but I have a lot of disagreements with him. Tweeted at me the other day. He said, this offense is built to make a playoff run. And think about it right now. Just a couple weeks ago, we were talking about they have no weapons on this team. All they were truly lacking was a proper number 1 receiver. Now your rest of your receivers are in the proper slots. Keon Coleman is having a fantastic rookie season. Khalil Shakir looks like he's going to develop into a tremendous slot receiver. You're getting more tight end involvement in the passing game now with Kincaid and Knox. James Cook is electric. Ray Davis adds the power. Your offensive line is blocking at a high rate. Defensively, we've always had questions about some of these new guys taking over at safety, at linebacker. And what happens? we're seeing the same results that we've seen last year. This team is clicking. They seemingly are being coached at a very high level right now. They have all of the parts to be a very good squad this year going forward. And I know we're going to talk about Super Bowl contender, this and that. The biggest difference for this team going forward is that in recent years, they have not been able to rest players going into the playoffs. They've had to deal with a lot of injuries, and they have had to play a lot of good teams shorthanded. If this team can jump out to a big enough lead, secure the division with enough games remaining, and avoid an injury plague, they're going to be set up better than what they have the last couple years to make a legitimate run.
Well, you mentioned jumping out to leads. You were talking about seasonal leads. They haven't had a good job jumping out to leads to start the games recently. Coming into this game, Bills' point differentials in the first quarter was -15, but then you jump to the second through the fourth quarter, it's a +78, and they sort of fixed that here. They didn't let the scripted plays, bother them from a defensive side. They started out with 2 3-and-outs, giving 2 3-and-outs to the Seahawks, and went 14 plays, 90 yards for a touchdown on their opening drive. So I think that was very encouraging going into the half 14-3. I mean, the Seahawks were shooting themselves in the foot, of course, and it should be noted that they had 2 goal line situations, although one of them was due to Josh Allen's first interception of the year, his first in 301 pass attempts. That's the longest streak in team history, and that streak was broken. But I guess we gave him a freebie for one of those goal line mishaps. The other one, the second one I think was the 4th down Geno trip on his own center, and then the first one, which led to a field goal, was a high snap on that put him back at least 20 yards. But overall, even if those had been converted to scores, I think the Bills would have handled themselves in the second half like they did, and like they have all season, making adjustments and such.
For sure, I'd agree. I think this is a team that has thrived off of adjustments this season. And for the Bills, if they want to make that Super Bowl push, like years that they failed in the past, they're going to have to continue that. Like after we lost those 2 games, likewise, I was never too down on this team. I thought the wide receiver core, even with all the criticism, thought was still good enough to make a run somewhere in the playoffs. I don't think I'm at the point yet where I'm going to crown the Bills Super Bowl contender. I know a lot of people are probably going to not like that, but I just need to see it a few more times. I feel I'm not a guy who's going to ride the highs and lows. I feel there's still a game or two where we have to show against a team like Miami would be a great team to show this against that's just starting to get a little bit healthy. The Chiefs, the Niners, the Lions, there's still that stretch, that gauntlet coming up here in December and early January, where we're going to have that tough stretch of football come right back again, just like how we had it in the beginning of the year. And that's when you have to play your best football. I don't give a damn if we play our best game in the fourth game of the year. This has been the problem in years past. We have to be able to bring it in January and then February. So far, so good. I just need to see a little bit more. So I think we're close, but I'm not crowning them Super Bowl contenders just yet.
Carson, I'm not one to disagree with you often, but you're wrong here. They are a Super Bowl contender. Every metric says it, and I'm not one to argue with the numbers. Do you know what their DVOA is right now?
I do not off the top of the head.
It's 28.1%. Do you know what KC's DVOA is right now?
Probably lower than that.
28.1%. They have the same DVOA as the 2-time defending Super Bowl champs. A team that they lost because they missed a field goal with a minute and a half left in the game. There's 3 teams ahead of them: Detroit, Baltimore, Minnesota. We all know Detroit, Kansas City, they're the top 2 teams right now. Baltimore, throw them in there as well. But they have 3 losses too. Like, let's not just crown Baltimore. They just lost to the Cleveland Browns and Jameis Winston.
They did.
Highest ceiling, lowest floor for
all
Baltimore,
these,
I think, the contenders.
The Bills right now have the number 2 DVOA offense. They have the number 9 DVOA defense. I did a look into DVOA in past years. Everybody, even when the Bills offense was struggling this year, was saying that the offense looks horrible. Well, their DVOA actually compared to the last 4 years stacked up just as good as any of those seasons. The defense is what has actually taken the step down this year. But it was always expected that you were going to take a step back in the beginning of the season when you have a new safety tandem, when you have different linebackers in there, and you have moving parts. But what does a Sean McDermott defense typically do as the year goes on and they build continuity? They get stronger. They get better. And the one thing that normally hurts them that we don't acknowledge is that typically in the playoffs, they're playing shorthanded against elite offenses. Last year, no Terrell Bernard against Kansas City. You're playing A.J. Klein. Why does the Bills' defense look horrible against Kansas City? You don't have any linebackers in that game. The year before against Cincinnati, no Daquan Jones. You're playing with the injured Greg Rousseau. You have no Von Miller. You have other people that you're missing. So the Bills go up against Cincinnati. They get beat up. Why? They can't get any pass rush on Joe Burrow. Well, when you don't have when you don't have Daquan Jones, you don't have a healthy Greg Rousseau, how are you going to generate a pass rush? You can't. The year before that, 13 seconds, Trey White. He was an all-pro corner at that time. He's out for that game. Let's be real. Trey White at his prime, Kansas City's not scoring 38 points against that Bills defense. Bills probably win the game. The key to this team is trying to keep this group as injury-free as possible. And the difference between this unit and past units is past units had high-end star power, where if you lost a guy, the drop-off from here to the next guy was significant. There are only a few players on this entire defense where you can say that for these guys right now. Christian Benford, if he was out, him to Elam, that's a drop. But Bernard, if he goes out, that's a drop. I'm not panicking about any injuries to safety. I am not panicking about any injuries to the defensive line unless it comes in volume numbers. If this team gets Matt Milano back in December and you go into the playoffs with Milano, Bernard, Williams, you have Spector as depth. I'm telling you, man, you're going to see a different defense going up against these top offenses if they're healthy. I know this is a long-winded answer, but I think injury problems have contributed as much to the Bills' defensive failings in the playoffs as anything else, but we don't acknowledge it because you don't want to make excuses in football. So we scapegoat the coaches. The simple fact is this: when you go up against Kansas City, when you go up against Baltimore, when you go up against any of those top three quarterbacks, Burrow, Lamar, Pat Mahomes, if you have significant injuries on your defense, you're going to get throttled. And then you need your offense to make up for it. So if they can stay healthy, this team is absolutely a Super Bowl contender, but they have a lot of competition in their way as well.
I would normally agree with all that, and I agree with your assessment of previous playoff shortcomings being significant because of defensive injuries. But speaking of defense, the Chiefs seem to be relying on their defense more so this year because Pat Mahomes has not been playing up to his level of quarterbacking. Maybe average, above average, but not number one overall MVP. He may still be elected the MVP just by default because his team's going to be the number one seed. But I mean, if you see the Chiefs are now trading for Joshua, how do you say his name? Uche from the Patriots,
Uche, yeah.
And they're adding him to a Chris Jones-led defense. I mean, the key for the Bills is going to be pass protection when they go up against the Chiefs, not just for their upcoming regular season game, but in the playoffs when we feel it's inevitable that they're going to meet. So the Chiefs seem to be just getting away with a lot of things that the Bills never could when we had our offensive shortcomings, but they're doing it on the strength of their defense, and their star players aren't going down left and right on all three levels. So I'm just looking at the Chiefs. I'm looking at the Ravens. The Ravens seem to be an up and down team, but at their best, they're at the top of the Super Bowl contenders here, and we got to find a way to contain Derrick Henry the next time they meet up.
That's something that should give you confidence, though, that we're talking about the Chiefs winning because of their defense. That basically is telling you the Chiefs aren't winning because of their offense right now. Their offense is still very good, and it's capable of going off at any moment in time. But when you're talking about the 2020 Chiefs or the 2021 Chiefs, you went into the game thinking, even if we have the top-ranked defense in the league, there's a good chance we're going to allow 27-plus points in this game. We're going to have to score at a high level just to even be in this game. With the Chiefs winning games in spite of their offense sometimes not being great, what it means is you don't need to have a perfect offensive day to beat them. You just have to make that one or two plays. Now, the Chiefs have an insanely great track record of winning one-score games and winning close games. But I don't go into any game against the Chiefs now thinking the Bills are going to get blown out. 4 or 5 years ago, I was petrified going into every game thinking Josh Allen has to be perfect.
True.
I don't feel like Josh Allen has to be perfect to beat the Chiefs. The same with the Ravens. You don't know what version of the Ravens you're going to get in the playoffs. Lamar can be great, or he can be like he did against KC in the playoffs last year. The way I look at it right now is perfect scenario for the Bills come in the playoff time. They don't need to be the 1 seed. They really don't. I would love it, but I don't see that happening. If KC gets the 1, you need Buffalo to either be the 2 or the 3. I don't care if you're the 2. I don't care if you're the 3. Just do not be the 4 to where you play them in the divisional round. Because if you can avoid them until at least the AFC Championship, there is still an outside possibility they can get upset and you can avoid them, which exponentially helps your chances. But then at the same time, if you're the 2 to 3, you're probably going to have a chance to rest your starters the last week of the regular season to then give them that extra week of rest, which is something that the Chiefs did last year, but the Bills did not. Home field advantage, don't even care about it anymore in the playoffs. The Bills have lost back-to-back years at home against the Bengals and the Chiefs. All that matters is Josh Allen goes out there and this team performs. I don't care if it's at Arrowhead. I don't care if it's at M&T Bank Stadium. I don't care if it's in Houston.
One thing for you during this regular season where it could change, because there is still the chance at the 1 seed where they have a game with Kansas City that they can get on them. Kansas City, I don't think it's going to be 16-1 this year. If the Bills beat them, I don't think Kansas City is going through the season completely unscathed. Now, I don't think the Bills are going to be 15-2 by year's end too. But there is still I still feel like there's a chance at this point in the season that they could be contending for the 1 seed at the end of the year, and that bye serves the same purpose that what you're saying. But you're saying here, if KC
for it. Yeah,
exactly. But the Bills are in a bad situation with the tiebreakers too, where if they're in a race with these other teams for the 1 seed, it might be a case where it's like, just get healthy, because it's no worry. You're so much out of your control. If that's what you can control is being healthy and limiting snaps, then that's what you should do. 100% agree. But there's still a very real possibility, which is why the next 2 weeks are so important for that KC game, to chase after that 1 seed for the first time and get that bye, because the Bills. I don't know how many years would it have been? How many years have they been the 2 seed since they switched that rule over? Because they switched the rule over right into 2020, right? Or was it into 2020? I think so. Yeah, because 2020 at least had to have existed in 2020 because they were the 2 seed playing the 7 seed Colts in that game. So I don't know what it is, but that would have been, a little peer into a different universe. If it's only a 6-team wild card, how much the Bills would benefit from that bye for the 2 seed.
It's a pro-con thing, dude. If they would have had the old rules, they would have had the bye week going to the playoffs multiple times.
Yeah.
Maybe they're more rested up. Maybe you see a different version of them in those divisional round games. But at the same point, they wouldn't have had the wild card round playoff wins. And then maybe we'd be a little bit even angrier as a fan base because we'd have 2 or 3 less playoff wins and less to even point to with that. So I don't know, man. It's
It's true. It's a good point.
It's tough.
Yeah, they would have some more fervor for the McDermott.
But at the end of the day,
factors, that's for
we
sure.
are going to know after the Chiefs game, most likely one way or another, if it's possible to go for the one or not. And assuming the Bills beat Miami to go up 4 games and have the tiebreaker, you are likely going to be in a situation where early December you are playing to lock up the division. Now, I'm not saying if you lock up the division, you rest your starters for like 3 games. Like, that'd be crazy. But maybe going into those late season games, if you know you're likely going to be the 2 or 3 at that point, hold out guys that are banged up a little bit.
Yeah.
If somebody has a nagging injury or somebody has something, don't force them to play. Let them get healthy. If you have situations where you can give someone more of an opportunity to recover, err on the side of the caution, because I think this team has gone through too many battles in the last couple of years. Last year, they needed to win 5 games in a row just to make the playoffs. That takes a lot out of a team that knows they have to win every single week just to make the playoffs and to finish strong. And everybody's always like, well, I want the Bills to be playing their best football in December and January. They typically are. They've had a winning streak of at least 4 games going into the playoffs the last 4 years. So they are playing good football heading into all these years. But sometimes you exert all of that energy and then you don't have any more of it. Or you have to throw everything out there just to make the playoffs, and then you don't have anything secret still going into the playoffs. You think about 2 years ago when they got killed by Cincinnati. That was the year you had the shooting in Buffalo. Dawson Knox lost his brother. You had DeMar Hamlin. You had Von Miller tear his ACL. They dealt with so much adversity that year, and it just mentally and physically drained them. So I don't want to be in the excuse-making industry, but it's not like this Bills team has gone into the playoffs with perfect scenarios. Yes, they were more than capable of winning a Super Bowl the last 4 years, but they also had to deal with quite a bit more adversity than some other teams that were in the playoffs.
I'd like to stress a quick point though. That's no fault but their own. That's what I talk about when I say it's a week-to-week league. You have to take care of the teams that you take care of. You can't have a game where it's a slip-up game. Is it bound to happen? Sure. But it's a week-to-week league, and I just need to see more from this team because you have that Tennessee first half. You have the week against the Ravens. You have the week against the Texans where there were legitimate concerns. I just don't want to be here 2 weeks from now. Let's say they slip up against the Dolphins, and then who knows what happens in that Colts game. Who knows how the future plays out. I just don't want to be here in 2 weeks thinking again, because we did this after the Jacksonville game. I just don't want to be here thinking, well, maybe there are concerns about this team where, I don't know, maybe the roster's not good enough. You'll have the fans out here calling for McDermott's head. Joe Brady, is he really that good? I just don't want to be in that situation again. I don't think it'll happen, but I just need – to me, this Sunday game is a prove-it game. Show that you're for real to me, to a team that you've had their number on for the last 4 to 5 years, a team that is now healthy. They get Tua back, their starting quarterback. They just they had a bad loss last week. They're going to be coming out firing all cylinders. They have nothing to lose. They're backed up against the corner. And Mike, I'm hoping to agree with you. I want to agree with you. I think I will end up agreeing with you. But it's a week-to-week league. I mean, anything can change. 2 weeks from now, we could be, 6-4, and then all of a sudden the complete opinion changes. So
And you can also change your opinion in 2 weeks as well.
Yes, exactly. I totally agree. I hope to agree with you. I think I will likely agree with you. It's just I'm not there yet.
There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just a little bit more optimistic. And you know
where my optimism comes from the most with this is that when you look around the league, no one has been extremely convincing in this AFC too.
Yes,
so when you stack the Bills against the rest of the contenders, and KC before this game, even in a couple weeks with Buffalo, Monday night against the Bucs, albeit a Bucs team that's really beat up on offense now, so that game isn't as fun as it was a couple weeks ago. But then a game they're at home for both these, but against the Broncos, 2 teams that have been decent, have played up, have played some good football this year, and I want to see them against this There's a situation where they're coming in limping, though. Like that Broncos game, that Sean Payton's going to play it like his Super Bowl. So I just think looking at the contenders, like we talked about the Ravens earlier, like the Ravens can be as good as anybody in the NFL, but somehow they can also lose the Jameis Winston Browns and the Raiders, two of the worst teams in the league, and where I have them in my personal rankings, literally two of like the worst teams in the NFL. Like that's a team that you can't clearly has some faults. The injuries to the Texans are a concern now with obviously, shout out, hopefully gets well as soon as he does. Stephon Diggs with his injury. We don't know when Nico Collins is going to come back with that hamstring, and a hamstring is something that can, linger and come back throughout the year. I hate when anybody has a hamstring injury, any sport. It's one of the worst nagging injuries you can have. So there's a lot of questions. The Steelers, I don't know. I might be terrified of the Steelers, honestly. That might be the team I'm actually scared of.
No,
I'm only half joking. This voodoo
Stop.
magic is crazy.
Oh yeah,
Have some respect for yourself, Jake.
It's crazy.
Have we learned nothing from urinating tree? It's the Steeler BS and the high-end talent that keeps them winning 9 games every year.
Did you see the
Just like Colin
dangerous
I's winning
Comanche
streak.
Bros sandwich, though?
The Steelers are not a threat, Jake. They are not a threat.
I'm just saying. I'm just
Stop
putting it out there. All
Stop.
right.
They're
They're not a threat, but they'll mess
against
around
good
and win
teams.
9 games every year for some reason.
Let's talk about a team who might be a threat and might not.
Okay,
So go ahead. Do you have something here?
I do want to second your point, though.
Yes.
You hit the nail in the coffin right there. The reason why the Bills are Super Bowl contenders is because the top is not what it is normally. It's lower. So there's more parity in the league. So because of what you said about the Chiefs, because of what you said about Baltimore and Houston, yes, the Bills might not be as high-end talented as what they've been the last 4 years, but neither is any of their top competition. So it's almost like, this is a weird thing to say, even if the Bills have technically regressed over the last couple years, I think Kansas City has regressed more in that time span. Now, it's weird to say that about a team that's won 2 straight Super Bowls, but Kansas City is winning.
That shows how far ahead they were for everybody for a while.
I feel like in 2020, 2021, when the Bills were probably at the top of their game, Kansas City was probably one of the most unbeatable teams I'd ever seen in the NFL at that point in time. They are much more beatable. Any given Sunday, Kansas City could lose to Houston. They can lose to Pittsburgh. They can lose to Baltimore. They can lose to the Bills. Doesn't mean they will, but if you look at the betting markets right now, there are 5 teams that Vegas thinks are the contenders in the league. So 4 teams in the championship games from last year, then the Bills. It's San Fran, it's Detroit, it's Baltimore, KC, and the Bills. Right now, the Bills have a 17% chance of winning the AFC and an 8% chance of winning the Super Bowl. That might sound low, but when you consider how high the odds are for Detroit and KC and Baltimore, it really is a select few teams that have odds as high as the Bills do right now.
Yep. Very well said. So we have an exciting ride down the way, but we have a big game. Let's get our predictions in before we wrap up here for a big game on Sunday. As Carson mentioned, we'll start with you, Carson. A team that's desperate, back against the wall, and thought they had a win last week to get feeling good, and then they didn't get that. So now it's even more desperate than they would have been. Can put a stamp on the division. Are you worried about this game at all? What are your thoughts? What's your prediction for Sunday against Miami?
Well, I would say I'm a little concerned. I think the Bills, I'm not a huge person that's into is a team coming off a win or a loss this week. And I said this too against Jacksonville, and the Bills took care of business against Jacksonville. But to me, this game, I'm throwing the records out the window. Skylar Thompson, Tim Boyle, those 2 guys were the quarterbacks for the Dolphins. They'd be lucky to be playing in some XFL teams, and I say that respectfully, especially Skylar Thompson. I think he's a decent backup in this league. But regardless, the record should be thrown out the window in this game. Tua is back. That offense showed signs of clicking last week. So that offense is still as explosive as ever. You have to be careful with that team. Defensively, overall, they've been pretty solid. They're sixth in overall, fourth in the pass. They're average against the run. But to me, the Bills have to get ahead on first and second down. Miami's defense is second. They're second best in the league on third down. So this is a game. It scares me if the Bills get a little too confident in this game after a huge win in Seattle like that. They got to be careful against a team like Miami, who's going to throw the book at you. They've got nothing to lose. This is their season right here. This game, they go to what are they? 3-2 and 6 right now. So
2-5.
2-5. They go to 2-6. It's pretty much put a nail in the coffin. So are we throwing predictions out right now?
Yep.
23-21 Miami.
Huh.
This is crazy.
I know I've been a
Who is
pessimist.
this
I know
guy?
I hate that, but to me, it's just I got a bad feeling about this week.
Carson, I can tell you the Dolphins fans have had a bad feeling about this team all season. Yes, they got Tua back. Yes, they look better with Tua. I was checking in on a live stream of Dolphins fans right before we went out of the air, including our favorite Dolphins fan, Nikki Smokes, was in on that, of course, as well, who's been lamenting the Dolphins for the last few weeks, ever since the first Bills game. They're all in agreement that it's better with Tua, but it's almost like going from an F to a C+, they said. So, I mean, they're going to be the dregs of the league anymore, but are they going to be a threat to the Bills? Nobody believes it. They lost to a Cards team that had not won back-to-back games in 3 years, and Nikki joked that they lost to Kyler Murray coming off the Call of Six duty release. So even when Kyler Murray's distracted by new video games coming out, he can still beat the Miami Dolphins. They were messing around with their snaps for half the game, not unlike the Seahawks did. They fumbled a snap on the first drive. Tua actually recovered that, but then they had a high snap in the second half, which actually led directly to a safety. So, and fun little fact: the Seahawks center that played those snaps, he was the Dolphins center last year. So a little bit of a kismet there, I guess. There was one particular play that really gnawed them. Calling a fade to Tyreek Hill on 3rd and 5 from the 7 right before the half. And that seems to be a play that they've wanted the Dolphins to rip out of their playbook for at least a couple of years now. They even had Tyreek Hill on the live stream before and made note of that. And Tyreek kind of laughed at that, the idea of they got to rip that playbook out of. He didn't say that, but he just laughed at the notion of that being brought up. And as soon as that happened and they had to settle for a field goal before the half, they were all writing game over in their notes. They think they have zero chance against the Bills this week. They're saying even if they do beat the Bills, it'll be a meaningless game for them. They'll just get super drunk afterwards on a live stream and maybe talk some junk. But they ultimately don't think that this team is going anywhere this year. If they don't make the playoffs, if they don't even get a playoff win, they're saying rip it down to the studs, fire everybody. So the Dolphins fans are on their last legs. I don't think we should. Obviously, with Waddle and Hill, they always have a danger to go deep. But Sean McDermott and Bobby Babbitt's defenses so far have been containing them as good as any team in this league. So I think the Dolphins, the fans are saying that the Dolphins just have no fight. They have no heart in them. And I think the Bills are going to be ready to pounce on that. So I'm saying this is going to be a lot more decisive, a lot more decisive, not unlike the last 2 games have been for the Bills, and a lot more than I've been predicting lately. I'll say 34-13. We're going to knock them out of the water.
Damn. This is let's just disagree with Carson Day. The line is 6, and I feel like that's a trap line because the Bills are coming off 2 blowout wins. The Dolphins have been awful, but they have Tua back. I feel like Vegas wants people to put money on the Bills covering, which tells me the smart play is probably not to put the money on the Bills covering. But 6 is always a dangerous number. I think the Bills are going to win. I think it's going to be much closer than what Bills fans think. I'll say Buffalo 27-24. I think Miami might be able to be a little bit more dangerous than what they were the first game. But in the end of the day, the Bills are the better team. They normally have answers for Tua. I don't think that the Dolphins offense is just going to magically find themselves on the road. But, Close game, but I'll have the Bills 27-24.
I'm right with you there. A little worried about where that line is. I was like, oh, that's suspiciously low. But the markets feel good about the Dolphins with Tua back in the lineup. They didn't look bad last week. I mean, losing on a last field goal to the Cardinals. I'm high on this Cardinals team. I think they're good. They put a good fight and everything. The last couple weeks, they're right in the thick of it with the NFC West. So there's no shame in that. But I think this Bills team's got too much. And I think that even if it's a good fight for 3 quarters from the Dolphins, the Bills will just impose their will physically on this team. I think they're just a more physical team on the offensive and defensive line, and that's going to come through with the run game again, which was excellent this week. James Cook, another awesome week. Ray Davis doing well. So I think the Bills will end up leaning on that. I do think it will be a high-scoring affair. I've got the Bills winning 34-24 against the Miami Dolphins on Sunday. So I feel confident, though. I'm not worried about Carson. I am worried about that game coming, but it's next week. And I've marked it out in my predictions all through the year. It was always that Colts matchup, and now with Joe Flacco in there officially, it's a little bit of a different scenario than if it was going to be Anthony Richardson, So we'll see. But let's get through Miami, get a stranglehold in that division. Then we have a very interesting next set of 3 games coming up for the Bills. But we paid the Bills tonight, fellas. So thank you all for tuning in with us. For Carson, Parthum, Bundt, and myself, and shout out to our sponsor, Picasso's Pizza. Get your Picasso's Pizza anywhere nationwide. Have a great night, folks, and go Bills.
Go Bills.